Centerpoint Archery, celebrating the timeless traditions of bow hunting. Inline vertical crossbows and draw lock. For bow hunters and target shooters worldwide, Crossbow Accessory Company, manufacturing safe and portable crossbow decocking system. And Taiwee, live your passion, Taiwee. Raven Crossbows, relentless innovation, that's the Raven way. And Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota, aim true and hunt free. Hey everybody, I'm Michael, the owner and creator of Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota. And today's podcast topic is going to be about an archery hunter's first kill. You know, a hunter's first archery kill is really a memorable experience. It's often accomplished by a mix of emotions, including, like excitement and relief that you finally did it. Perhaps a touch of reflection on the hunt. And many hunters find it's a powerful moment of connection with nature and a significant milestone in their hunting journey. The experience can also highlight the importance of ethical hunting practices and your shot placement. So I think today I'm just going to start off and I'm going to tell you about my first archery kill. Well, this story starts the hunting season before my actual first archery kill. I was hunting in central Minnesota during the slug season. I had started archery hunting the previous 3 years before this, but I hadn't harvested a deer. So by the time the slug season had rolled around, I started deciding, I think I'm going to hunt with a shotgun. I need some venison. Well, little did I know that I would shoot a buck from my ground blind at 5 yards. And I was kind of, astonished that had happened. That it was the closest deer I had killed at that time. But I was also using what I had learned during my bow hunting season, like scent control, how to approach your stand, using the wind, movement, all these things that I was picking up and starting to understand it more in depth, because of my archery hunting. Well, I decided then that was it. That was the last year that I would hunt with a shotgun, and I was only going to bow hunt next year. So we fast forward now to that next archery season. It was probably about mid-season. I would probably say October, middle of October, somewhere in there. And I was in the woods, sitting on a 5-gallon bucket. And I was sitting in a kind of like a ground blind that was all brush around me, and I had full camo on and everything. I was pretty well hidden in there. And I was about 15 yards from a cornfield. And so at the time I was shooting an XI compound bow with an overdraw, and my draw poundage was set at 70 pounds. So the bow shot really fairly fast for back then. This is the 80s we're talking, back in the 80s. So, well, as I'm sitting there, I had a buck come walking towards me down the edge of this corn. And, right away I got ready and drew back and waited for the deer to be, in a position to make the shot. Well, when I released the arrow, that buck had jumped the string, how they'll do that. Well, this one actually went all the way down to the ground with his chest, his brisket plate or whatever, brisket plate hit the actual field, and the arrow hit him in the shoulder up high on his back. So it made a sound thump, like, oh, okay. So I knew I had hit him, but I wasn't sure after that. My mind was just spinning. I wasn't sure exactly where that arrow had hit him. So, I gave it a few minutes, and then I walked over to see just exactly what was going on there at the hit site. Well, I found the arrow and the end of it. Now you got to remember, we were using open broadheads. There was no collapsible broadheads or open on impact broadheads back then, and also we were using aluminum arrows. So my arrow had mushroomed out on the end where your broadhead screws into the insert. It had flattened, it had mushroomed. And I was looking at that, and there was no blood anywhere up on the arrow. There was a few pieces of hair on the broadhead itself. No blood where the buck was standing. And so I started to look in the cornfield where it went, and I seen like one little tiny spot of blood. I think that was blood, it's hard to tell sometimes, but so I basically gave that buck a haircut, and that was about it. So, he was gone. It was a non-fatal shot. I was heartbroken because I had missed my chance, at that first archery deer. And so I was a little bit down, and that's kind of the way archery is. There's a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and they can be awful high and they can be awful low. But so I went home with my tail tucked that day, and then a couple days later, I don't know, a week later, so I decided I think I'm going to go back. I think I'm ready to try that again and see what happens. And so I went back actually to that exact same ground blind, that brush and stuff that I had set up, and I did everything the same as far as approaching it and getting into my stand and that. But on this day, what I did was back then we had film containers that our 35 millimeter film came in, and I put cotton balls in there, and then I would put dough and heat in there, or tanks 69, and I set that out next to the corn stalks there by the corn, exactly where I wanted these deer when they came through either way to stop. So I would have a perfect broadside 15-20 yard shot. So I'm sitting there on the bucket, and it was morning, and as that started slipping away, it got kind of cloudy, that gray feeling you get in October and that, and you can just feel it in the air. It's like, it's going to snow, and it just starts to rain a little. And I'm thinking, great, and then it started sleeting a little, and then it actually turned over to snow. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, maybe I should just pack it in. And then I remembered I was watching a video that was produced back then by Dan Fitzgerald, and he said something in a video once, because he was in kind of the same situation as far as weather, and he said, you got to stick to your plan. Don't let it defeat you. Stick to your plan, go through with it, and you'll be successful. So that's what I did. I decided, well, I'm going to stay and just hunt out and be done with it. Well, I started to hear the rustling of corn stalks, and out stepped the doe, and I wasn't able to get to full draw. And she just kind of turned and walked away. She didn't even stop at that scent bottle, which surprised me, to smell it or anything. But and then I was unable to get to full draw at that point, and so then a second doe stepped out, and she put her nose down at the scent container. Well, now I'm already at full draw, so all I had to do was find my spot and put the pin on there. And so that scent container gave me enough time to find that spot to place my arrow. And I released the arrow. I heard the arrow impact the deer's body, and then I could hear the blood spray from the exit hole hitting the dry corn stalks. And the doe turned She didn't kick. She didn't do anything. She just turned and followed the first deer, that first doe. She just followed it and kept walking till about 50 yards, and then she tipped over and died right there. Well, I stood up off stood up off the bucket, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it. It actually all had come together, and I had finally done it. I had actually harvested a deer with my archery equipment after 3 years of trying. So man, what an exciting feeling that was. The range of emotions can be significant at that point, I found out. From the thrill of the successful shot to realizing that, hey, I just, took a life. Some hunters may, experience like guilt, while others feel a sense of accomplishment or gratitude or whatever. I think I had some of each of those feelings as I was looking at that first archery kill. But I'll tell you what, I was hooked. I have archery hunted ever since. I'm now 66 years old, and I don't hunt with a compound bow any longer due to age and my body and stuff. So I hunt with a crossbow, and I can still enjoy archery hunting so much. But that first archery kill is a personal, achievement that stays with a hunter for the rest of your life, and it often becomes just like this, a really, interesting and fun story to tell. I know I'll remember it the rest of my life, and I'll share it the rest of my life. So, some of us, though, we have a smooth, successful first kill like mine was. I mean, it was clean kill, it was a fast kill, and it was successful. But others, they might face some challenges, including like tracking difficulties or shot placement issues or just emotional challenges too. Either way, that first archery kill will always be very special to each hunter in its own way, and that's what makes it so great. It's kind of the short story into things, how it all happened for me, but I just wanted to put that out there and see if any of you guys relate to that or not, or give me some comments on this too. How did your first kill go? How did you manage to succeed at that? And stuff like that. So, and if you like this type of a podcast, if you want more of this kind of story stuff or what you'd like to hear. But I want to thank you guys for listening, to my first archery kill story. And you can find more podcasts from Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota on Spotify. Also, we have videos on our YouTube channel from different hunts and different topics. So you can check us out there, and also on Facebook too. And we have a website that is Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota. So it'd be, actually the address is cbhom2.wixsite.com/mysite2. And on there we have equipment that we use. We have just different information and stuff on our Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota group. So it's interesting. Check it out, and again, give us some feedback on that, because we're just getting these things up and running. So, well, that's about all I got today. So until we talk again, happy hunting.